All right. Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, TCM. This is your annual draft review. Hokie and myself are here to talk about the first round of the most previous draft that happened last weekend, or almost a week ago at this point, about 5 days. We're going to do what we always do, go through the first round pick by pick, just kind of give a brief overview of what we think about the player, where we think about where they landed in the draft, and then kind of see where it takes us from there. So, we will start, as always, with pick one. Pick one this year went to Seattle. It was the pitcher Rod Beckstead. So, what did you think about Beckstead?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little backstory. Actually, Giffen is always away at his like cottage and stuff on the weekends, so I wasn't sure if he was going to get to the draft when he didn't post Thursday or Friday. So I drafted for him so that he wouldn't just get autoed. And drafted him Rod Beckstead. Obviously, because I'm the one that drafted him, I thought he was by far the best pitcher in this draft, hands down. Control well above his command is fairly decent. Power is fantastic. His fastball is really good. His home runs are about a home run per every 10 innings, which is not terrible. And really, the only thing that kind of is bothersome is his health at 69. So that was kind of that. Now, however, he actually hated that pick, which is why I had to work with both him and Rain to try to get him a player that he actually wanted instead. And Rain was lucky, uh, in my opinion. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. I think he is by far the number one pick in this draft.
Yeah, I wish I'd known he had hit the pick. I gladly would have traded him for him. I absolutely love this pitcher. I mean, he's one of those guys that if he's there at any point in the draft, you just grab him. I mean, 17. I'm personally a big power guy, well, as you are more often than not. So big power, big good control. His command and movement are right around his overall. So I mean, if they keep close to that, then he can end up being a very, very good pitcher. Great fastball, great changeup, solid curve. Ground ball rate looks maybe a little bit higher, but as a power ball pitcher, which is probably what he'll end up being, it's right about there. K to walk's not exactly where I want to see it for that power pitcher, but his OBA is so low that I'm okay with it. I definitely would have taken him, anywhere in the top 10 had he been there. So I think it. He's a very good pitcher. I think that if I'd known Seattle didn't like him, I gladly would have given them something else for him because I would gladly have put him in my minors and watched him never jump. So
Yeah, I just couldn't believe. I don't know what it is. I think it's one of those cases where he sees 90 peak and not everyone is necessarily going to become amazing, but by that, but I don't know. I would much rather have a 90 peak with those type of uh vitals than to go a 97 overall or 95 overall and actually not have the correct vitals.
yeah, and that's all personal preference. Some people see that the upside or just the peak or the overall, and they get all hot and bothered about it, and they just have to go with it. When sometimes there's better players a few spots down that are just obviously better builds. Um, and teach their own. Everybody needs to roll the dice, but when you have a pitcher that looks like Beckstead, like you're not wasting a pick taking him number one overall. Next, it was Kenny Ropley. He went number two overall. He's currently on the Flying Squirrels, so the Rocky and Bullwinkle team. He went to the Giants. Another guy, a little bit similar to who we just saw, but this guy Kenny has more power. His control is a little less overall, but still quite exactly where you want it to be compared to his overall. Um, and then you have the command and movement right around his overall. So I mean, a very similar player, year older, more power, a little less control at the moment, but also more room to grow. He has more upside than excuse me, Beckstead did. Pitchers are again similar. Good fastball, good change, okay curve. I wouldn't mind seeing those a little bit higher, especially since he is already a year older at 18. But he throws them all 100 miles an hour. 99 to 101 is his average speed on his pitch. Has a better strikeout to walk ratio. Um, Home runs look to be a little bit less than one per 10, maybe one per 11 or 12 most years. So I like this guy too. I like this guy quite a bit. I think I would have been very happy to draft him as well.
Yeah, I definitely do like Robley as well, and really what kind of stuck or put Beckstead above is just the command. Um, I have 55 command and 57 overall. There's always one of those things. What if his command finishes at 70 or something like that? I, the We haven't seen it enough to really know where command is going to be based on overall by the end, because we just haven't progressed enough. And so my concern there was just the command, and that's really the only thing. Otherwise, everything else looks absolutely fantastic. So if you really want to look at it, I would say that he could easily become the number one player in this draft when you look back in about 15 seasons. It's just whether or not he actually progresses the way he should.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I could take these guys either or in the top two, and I don't have a problem with it. So I think that those are two guys that definitely should have gone at the top of this draft. But that brings us to the Mets. Now you were saying the Mets, is this the pick that got switched for the one overall?
Yep. So
Okay,
Shane Rice.
so Rice technically went one overall, and Beckstead technically went, well, whatever you want to call it. But so Shane Rice, pitcher, Seattle liked more enough to get switched to. Um, Interesting pitcher. His home runs are way low. Like he has given up. He's just not giving up home runs. That's crazy. He's giving up almost one every other game, if not less. I don't think I've seen home runs that low, especially with a left-handed pitcher. Um, Vitals are interesting. He's a command power guy. His control is going to be okay. His movements will probably catch up, but I worry about how far it'll pace. His pitches are, I don't know. He's got two fastballs and the two off speeds just below his overall. So not ideal for me personally. I mean, the rest of his stats look pretty good, and his vitals look solid. Um, Oof, I just don't. I don't know. I like him. I do. I think there's some things going for him that the other two didn't quite have. I don't think he'll necessarily be better than the other two, um, especially with him turning 20 this offseason. But I just, I don't know. I don't know. I like him, but I don't love him like I love the other two.
Yeah, I would agree. I kind of, the way I look at him realistically is, yeah, he's going to be a good pitcher, I think. Um, Left-handed pitchers are always one of those areas where, for the most part, in Mogul, you never really know where they are. Um, but the fact that his command is so high, his power is fantastic. His fastball and two seamer are his two best pitches. Like there are a lot of positives that way. It's just he is almost a whole ERA above or 1 point above the other two pitchers in minor league numbers, right? So that does kind of hurt, in my opinion. Some of that. Um, like I said, I think he's going to be good. I just don't know necessarily how good he's going to be. The other problem I think with him going to Seattle, uh, Seattle Stadium's effects have him 107 right-handed batters for home runs. So it is more beneficial to be uh, a right-handed pitcher in that park, generally speaking.
So you're saying the TCM is differing from FCM a lot in that way.
Well, I don't know. I think we can definitely see that left-handed pitchers can be dominant. I don't
Oh no,
think.
I'm just talking about Seattle's park. Seattle's park in FCM is clearly a left-handed haven.
Yeah,
Left-handed pitchers go to Seattle and do things that they don't do anywhere else, and it's amazing to watch.
yeah. I mean, the thing is, when you look at Seattle, they only have one left-handed pitcher who's not very good, but his ERA back-to-back years have been 6.3 and 7.4. So I don't
Mm.
really know what they had beforehand. So, and they are obviously rebuilding. I just am kind of curious how everything will be. Because when you do look at, say, like Aaron Sanchez right now in Seattle, he's 9 home runs away from having his most home runs in a park, and he's a right-handed pitcher. So it's definitely a home run city. Even Tyler Danish last year let up 43. So it
Oof.
should be really curious how uh, those type of hitters smash the ball. And the concern is, even if his command is good, he doesn't necessarily have the movement or the control to push it all the way. Now he could become a full package, and I don't know. I just think between the other two, he's definitely not the top pitcher.
No.
I have to put him somewhere in the 3 to 5 range. There are some other pitchers that look pretty good. I just can't say he's the number one pick.
No, and especially apparently he has already jumped. He jumped to a 71.94, but his movement only went up 4 points. So his movement's only at a 64. So that concerns me quite a bit. To have that kind of jump and have the movement still lag that much, that could end up spelling a big issue for him. 'Cause, power or not, whatever else you have or not, you need a little bit of deception that comes from that movement. So if the movement's not catching up, not keeping up, you have a power lefty. Sure, that works sometimes, but oof, it could also just get smacked around a lot. So, yeah, he'll be one to kind of watch moving forward to see what happens. 4 pick went to Cincinnati. We got out of the pitchers and into a small run of outfielders with Tracy Godin going to Cincinnati, 17-year-old left-handed center fielder. Um, Contact first guy. I mean, this is a guy that's got that contact gap power. Little bit of speed. Speed is not going to quite play the way you exactly want. It's going to probably help a little bit in defense, but probably is not going to nab you too many bases. And his defense isn't quite what you would think it should be with that speed and everything else. So um, he should be okay. He should be a very good hitter. Um, Fielding though, ugh, you might throw him out there and let him run around a bit, but it might be more detrimental than what the bat gives you, and I think the bat might give you quite a bit. So, very excited to see that bat and how that develops.
Yeah, I would actually say the fact that he doesn't look like he can feel the ball is going to be a little bit of a problem in center field. But maybe it also depends what Percy puts together in that field. Plus, maybe DH. He's going to be a masher. Like there's no denying that. It's his eye, and this is the part that I've always had issues with in Mogul. Is a low eye doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to be good. It may just mean that he doesn't walk, but he doesn't strike out. Which sometimes you don't want someone to clog the bases, but I just don't know. That's the area that really determines whether or not he's going to be as good as what we think he is.
Yeah, you're right. For a long time, I put a lot of emphasis on eye in Mogul, to the point that if they didn't have a good eye, I wouldn't draft them. I would just completely let them go because I wanted somebody that had a good eye. Um, but in some of the other files, some of the other leagues, I've seen plenty of hitters that don't have a good eye that are tremendous, tremendous hitters even without that eye. I mean, yeah, they don't walk as much. Yeah, some of their other stats you like, maybe you want to see OBA, etc., isn't as high as it could be. But they still just they mash the ball and they're very predominant hitters. So I've stepped back off that as a necessity and more of become more of a strong like for me personally. So that first jump goes to see how that steps. If it steps continues to be 3 above his overall, I'm not as worried about it as I would be otherwise. If it starts to fall behind and then it really starts to lag behind, then I become a little bit more concerned.
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think he's going to be a good player, and I think at the end of the day, it's definitely a good pick here because he is definitely one of the better hitters. He may not be the best hitter, and that's really just kind of, a decision on what you are looking for. But he's definitely the right type of pick in this spot.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, you talk about good hitters. I think the next guy might be a better hitter. Maybe this would be interesting to see. And Haram Kabeka, um, left fielder, will stick there. Solid left field option. Um, his speed is straight defensive speed. His base stealing is pretty poor. He's not gonna swipe too many bags. That speed definitely is going into his defense. As you can see by his going back being a 90 rated feature. So, and he's got a nice bat. He's got a very nice bat. It looks like he's gonna hit for average, have some good power, both double power and home run power. And he's got a better eye. Like I think this guy's the better overall bat, and potentially better overall player. I think he is maybe doesn't have the ceiling the last guy has, but I don't know. I would have been hard pressed picking between these two if these are the two hitters I was picking between at the top of the draft.
Yeah, pretty much everything you just said there is exactly what I like about him, and I would say, in comparison between the two, he is 20 compared to 17, so Godin definitely has more time to hit his ceiling. But if at the end of the day they were to peak at the same number, I would say that Kabika is probably going to be the better hitter all around, on both sides of the plate. Whereas Godin is definitely more of a righty smashy. The thing that's interesting with Kabika, or whatever his name is it shows that he has 80 fielding. But when you look at that, the fielding is a 63, and so I'm just curious how much inflated it is because he can cover such a long area. Maybe he can't catch the ball, but he can run there. It's just kind of one of those things. But even that, like his arm strength is 80, which is pretty good for a left fielder, right? So I don't know if he's going to be a great fielder, but he's, I think, going to be the better hitter between the two.
And I don't know. When I look at his defense numbers, like I like him. I like him as a left fielder. Shit, I like him as a center fielder. I mean, honestly, I would be very considerate. I would highly consider turning him over to that, um, and seeing what he could do with that the lateral movement, the coming in, going back, all that stuff. Doesn't have the best arm, doesn't have the best glove work, so put him in center. See where that goes. He'll track down the balls, and I just feel like he won't make too many errors. Um, but who knows? I mean, but that's what I would personally. That's what I would do with him. I think he's wasted leaving him in left. I make him a center fielder, and just try to make him even that much more valuable. Um, and just give it a shot. If worst comes to worst, you DH him and you're happy with that. So next up was a shortstop. Went to Milwaukee. Justin Bailey, a young 17-year-old shortstop. Appears to be glove first, bat second. Um, Now the speed. Let's double check that. Real speed, very fast. So this is the typical guy you see in a lot of leagues going in those top five picks. A shortstop with defense and massive speed, and you just hope the bat catches up. I think the bat's gonna be pretty fine, if not quite good. So with all the time that he has and the almost 30 upside, um, gotta like this pick. You really gotta like this pick. Almost to the point that you're wondering why he didn't go a little bit sooner. But I think the last two guys are definitely gonna be better bats. But he has a chance to be a very good all around player and at a premium position.
Yeah, I definitely think that fielding is going to just absolutely jump up. Apparently, he's not very accurate at throwing, but I'm sure that will change. Like he is definitely one of the better shortstops that I've seen in the draft period when it comes to that. I think for hitting wise, he's just going to be like good. I don't think he's going to necessarily be the standout all star slugger by any standard. Uh, but it's one of those cases. I'm just saying, if he does around like 90 overall, he's probably going to have, maybe 90 contact. I'm curious whether the power in that goes really up, but it's definitely more suited against lefties. But I do think he was one of the better hitters, and I probably would have taken him over the two outfielders just based on him being a shortstop. And that speed is pretty dominating as well, even though his steal success is a little light.
Yeah, I think they hit the nail on the head with that. He's definitely the more overall rounded player, I think, compared to the last two bats. The last two bats are absolutely going to be dominant bats. He has a chance to be a very good bat and a very good fielder. So, yes, it'll be very curious to see how. he turns out. Got another outfielder goes next to Detroit. Carlos Fabregas goes, 17-year-old left-handed center fielder. Um, kind of similar to some of the bats have been talking about. He's got a lot of speed. Doesn't translate overly well to base stealing, but it should translate nicely into defense. Bat's solid. Nothing to write home about. It's going to get some gap power, and everything else is going to be kind of okay. So I like the pick. I like the bat. I like the speed ish. Um, but not sure if he goes here or should have gone maybe a little bit later. I just he's a guy that I like, but not a guy that I'm like, oh my god, I hope falls. I hope he falls. I have to have him. Have to have him. Like there's guys like this out there, and I feel like they might have done a little bit better with some of the picks still left on the board.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Fabregas looks like he could be very good, and I think he could be a completely well-rounded outfielder, maybe even more well-rounded than the other two that were taken. Um, it it will be interesting in terms of that. In a park where home runs are maybe more existent, maybe that gap power turns into extra power. I don't really know how that will affect Detroit. Uh, Left-handed batter, 127 home runs. So he's a lefty, right? Yeah. So I
Yep.
mean, maybe it does allow him to have a little bit more power, but I would say something like that. Once again, his speed is defensive. I don't think it's overly offensive minded, except for first to third. So he's a good pick. I do think there were some other choices that may have been more beneficial to Detroit.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we break the streak of hitters and go back to pitching for a pick. Will Baker, um, relief pitcher, which is a bit of a surprise to go this early. Will Baker goes here, excuse me, to Colorado with the eighth overall pick. Um, this one's a bit of a puzzle for me. I'm a big fan. Uh, Percy saying this was an auto pick. Is that correct?
Yes.
That
It
makes a
was
lot more. That
100%
makes
an auto pick.
perfect sense for me now. Then, okay, thank you, Percy. Yeah, so auto pick here makes a lot of sense. This guy just seems like I don't know. I don't. I like the pitches. They're all above his overall. Great fastball. He's gonna have a good change, very good changeup, and decent slider. Um, Power's amazing. Big time power. Throws the ball almost 100 miles an hour. You want to see that out of reliever, even if he is currently listed as a starter. So I'm not sure what he actually fell under post draft, opposed to in draft. But with that control and command both being under his overall and his movement being at his overall, ooh, I worry if he'll be effective at all, or if he's
Yeah,
just going to be one of those newer mogul guys that has that huge upside and huge overall and or not huge overall, but huge peak, and end up just being trash pitchers. I see those so many newer additions of mogul. So my fear would be that that's what he turns into being.
I definitely believe that 6 is making him into a starter. I don't think that's actually a bad idea. So, I'm someone that really likes to go for, uh, switching people up, and, his it's one of those things. I think he's 100% going to be an all-star closer. I think hands down, that's what I would do in this case more than likely, but to have 85 power and be 58 overall. Just imagine if you had that type of power as a starter. Because if he were to go, let's say 87, 88 overall is where he finished, realistically, his power in theory, Mogul would put it about 110 or 115. So it
Yeah,
would be well over what it could be. And this game does, like Mogul 2018 does go over the 100. So you can have over 100 in a specific setting, which is crazy. And it would be really interesting to kind of see The problem is if his command doesn't go up, that's just waiting to be bad news in Colorado.
Yeah. Yeah, I leave him as a relief pitcher. I don't switch him over because I think that with the control command being where they are, it's too much of a risk to try to stretch him out. I leave him as is, and hope for the best. But it's auto picks happen. But as far as auto picks go, that one's a bit unfortunate. I think it's going to be unfortunate in the end. Next, we're going back to outfielders. Brian Capioa, Capicoca, Capocia. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. All right, so Brian um, Capocia out of goes to the Royals. 17-year-old right-handed right fielder. Really good looking range. His health is really high, which might bloat his overall quite a bit. Bat looks okay, a lot of gap power, some pretty good speed. That's probably not going to translate much to base running, so I'm not really sure where that ends up. That ends up making him a rangy right fielder, um, or maybe makes him have to be changed to center fielder, which might actually be a better position for him. As far as the bat goes, it's okay. Again, one of those I don't have to have, but it wouldn't hurt me to have. It'll be interesting to see how many doubles he can hit with all that gap power if the contact stays up, and his eye continues to grow.
Yeah, I think that this is one of those you're really just hoping you get the upside, and kind of go with it because like the gap power is excellent. Can play right field or what looks like third base. Probably can also throw him into center field because once again, it's defensive speed. It's not offensive. Um, in fact, his steal success is 65%, which is rough. But he has all the potential to be a big slugger if everything were to progress evenly. I think the thing that does hurt as well is 90 health. So maybe that's good to not get injured, but that also always increases your overall in peak. So he may, have more of like an 88 or 87 overall feeling if he were to actually hit it. Now, most people seem to be missing, so that's where you're starting to get maybe into that 85 contact, 86 power or something like that, and that would be kind of interesting to see where it lines up. I just I think that I know that Incognito she was on vacation before, so she sent the list in. So I don't know what her full plan was, but I feel like it's a little bit of a miss. But usually, what she chooses ends up being positive. So I could be entirely wrong.
Yeah, I would definitely trust her drafting. Though again I am a little bit wary of how this ends up playing out. But again, you can say that about most draft picks in any draft in any round. So, but let's move on to another why guy saying he made the pick and apologizes. So, next pick is another shortstop. Tony Brunson went to the Baltimore Orioles. Not sure about this one either. I think he's a 19-year-old, throws right, bats left, so that's always interesting. Looks like he'll have a solid glove, though a little bit weaker arm. Um, and his eye's really high, which I always like to see. Good contact, good gap power. But his stats show decent home runs. Show actually more home runs than doubles. So, and just a very good overall bat. Very curious to see how he plays out. Um, I think he'd be a guy in some other leagues. You see that kind of combo, and you grab it and have him. Lower health probably helps his development. Um, I don't know. I'm intrigued by him. I like the other shortstop we already talked about better, but there's something about him that's just, and it might be the batting left, throwing righty kind of thing. But very curious about this one. What do you think on Mr. Brunson?
So Baltimore's open, so I actually drafted for Baltimore. I forget who I angered many times in the draft. I feel like it was Percy because every single time he had a plan to draft someone, I snagged them with Baltimore. But anyways, yeah, there you go. You just said it right there. Uh, but anyways, I did want Justin Bailey because I thought Justin Bailey was going to be the more sure shortstop. It's just Brunson has all the things that could make him a really, really good. And yes, power is not going to be his thing. And if you really looked at shortstops, does anyone care if your shortstop hits 30 home runs? Like,
No,
probably not. What you're looking for is good fielding, usually range and the actual fielding part, which he's substantial. He can hit the ball and get on base. His speed is not terrible. He doesn't steal a lot, but his success is better than some of the people with 90 speed, and he can make contact. Like, he is the type of person that is going to probably be a consistent hitter that isn't going causing problems, and he can field. And that's where I think he has some potential. In certain parks, he may do better than others. Um, but I think it was the right choice for Baltimore when you look at the team that they have, because surprisingly, they're actually competing. Uh, but hands down, I think shortstop is the position where they probably want someone a little more defensive minded in the future.
yeah, I mean, and you're right. I think it's one of those guys that I'm looking at, and the more I look at him, the more he starts to grow on you. But there's nothing that jumps out as like, oh my god, I have to have him. But I think that in a couple seasons after he matures a little bit more, you're like, oh my god, why didn't I have to have him? So I do like the pick. Um, it'll be interesting. I'm curious to watch this guy as well. A lot of guys in this draft, I'm curious to kind of watch how they develop, since most of them won't be developing for me. So, um, we got Hank Palmer, another left fielder who goes next, this time to the Miami Marlins. What do you think about Mr. Palmer?
You know what? Palmer has very good contact and gap power. Once again, he seems to struggle with that eye, but boy, is that fielding rough. Like, it looks good. I'm not actually sure why it says fielding's 59 now that I'm looking at his defense. But
No, yeah, I mean his glove work is 75, arm 75, accuracy 78. Like his glove
yeah,
looks a lot
maybe
better
his
than what it
fielding is,
shows.
yeah. I don't know. I think it's a good pick. Once again, what kind of does it for me is the eye. I really struggle at taking someone that has such a bad eye. So there's that, and I do think there were some better players later. You know, especially in outfield. The next two, in all honesty, I think both are better than Palmer. So it's just one of those things, but you know, who knows if he becomes like a 97 contact person and he just gets on base but maybe doesn't walk, that's not bad either.
Yeah, I think he'll play a fine left field. I want to talk about fielding. As far as the bat, like, yeah, I think the bat's going to play nicely. Um, but again, for me, and this is a me thing, when I'm drafting bats this early, um, I'm really preferring the left-handed bats. It's just, uh, I don't know why. I just think that there maybe there's not many as much of them. Whatever it is, tend to play better, especially since most people have right-handed pitchers. Whatever it is, but if I have a chance at a left-handed bat, I'm taking that over a guy that might even look a little bit better as a righty, for right or for wrong. Palmer, though, no, solid player. I think he'll play quite well once he gets going. Bill Heffer, another left-handed starting pitcher, is the next one off the block. Um, Bill's got one of those great fastballs, good circle changes. His two seamers okay. Um, Throws the ball just a billion miles an hour. Currently in short relief. I don't know if that's on purpose or by accident, but in
Um,
this draft file, he was listed as a short relief for usage. Um, Ground ball rate's about 45, probably go up to 48, 49, which would be very good. Um, and I'm sorry, there's just those messages keep popping up while we're talking. Vitals look good. Home runs don't seem to be too much of an issue. One every 10ish. And good all around stats. Looks like he is going to be an SP. That's good. I think we got a good mid to upper rotation starter here.
yeah, I think GD hit it right out of the ballpark. I was kind of surprised to see Heifer drop so far. He is obviously my type of pitcher. Now, once again, I don't want to really sound contradictory to what I said earlier. The command is kind of the scary thing, but that power control are pretty high. And once again, if I get a high power pitcher, I don't care if he's righty or lefty. I'll generally take the chance. And sometimes it colossally fails. But I think Heifer is going to be a pretty good pitcher. Um, yeah, there's really nothing to hate about that. And he's the fourth pitcher that's taken. Now, the next pitcher that got taken, I think, is more of a sure shot. But Heifer's got that ace mentality, I think, and that's really what GD needs because I think he's starting that long rebuild now.
Hmm.
Because Arizona kind of seems like they're gonna be falling right out.
Yeah, it's one of those things I think that you, me, and GD all agree on. We like those power pitchers, and don't really care which arm they use to throw with. Power is power from whatever angle it comes in at. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays out. But you're right. A lot of those outfielders that went, I see why they went where they went. But when then you see this guy still sitting there on the block, and you're just like, oh man, that's weird that he fell all the way out of the top 10 with somebody that looks like he has potentially top 10 talent. So it'll be curious to see how he does. Now, as you mentioned, the next pick was another pitcher to the Cubs, and that was Felipe Balzadava. He went to the Cubs. This guy is not a power pitcher. This guy is a control pitcher with okay power, solid movement, good fastball, good circle change. He's got that fastball changeup that you kind of want to see in your non-power pitchers, but his ground ball rate's low. It's only about 40%, so he's not a GB machine. Um, his home runs were okay. Strikeout to walk ratio was fine. All the stats look fine. But I don't know. I don't know. He's 17, so he's got plenty of room to grow. Got a big upside. So I mean, he's not the worst pitcher by far. Um, but it'll really depend on how some of those other vitals outside of his control jump when they get a chance to. If everything kind of keeps where it is, should have a very good pitcher in your hands. Um, if certain things start to really lag behind, like movement, could be an issue for him down the road.
Yeah, I definitely see like there can be some uh, red flags, and once again, I think command is the biggest one. Uh, but at the end of the day, like there are so many things to love. He's going to have that control, uh, powers, whatever. I think the movement won't lag, but will only time kind of will tell. And he's 17, and at the end of the day, like this is one of those guys I think is almost guaranteed to be good. It's just how good. And maybe he doesn't become, an ace, but if you even get just someone that's like a good number two, I don't think there's any reason to be upset with this pick.
No, I agree. I think he tends to be more that 2-3 pitcher than he does that one pitcher. But again, also depends on where you're at. If you're a contender, a lot of people's one pitchers, you're four pitchers. So um, the health being a little bit high does. I don't want to say concerns me, but when I see healths in those mid to upper 80s, and especially into the 90s, I worry about how much that actually plays with peak, and therefore plays with the player as a whole. So we'll time will tell, just like kind of all these other ones. First baseman goes off the draft in the next pick, 14 overall, Tampa Bay. That being Chris Tauber. What do you think about Mr. Tauber?
So he was also an auto for Tampa Bay. Turtle had just joined the league, so I don't know if he just didn't see that or not. I mean, there's definitely some things to like. He's a lefty. He's got 95 peak. His fielding doesn't actually look as bad as what it is. He can't throw to second base, but everything else looks pretty good. He's got good eye, his contact's really good. He's got the power and gap power. Like he is someone that could easily be a very dominating first baseman. It's just whether he hits it, and that's really that. I do think overall he's one of the better first basemen. I think there were a couple other ones that have the same potential, and it's just whether or not they hit. I don't think there was a first baseman in this draft that really stood out, but he's going to be good.
Yeah, that contact eye is interesting to see in the first baseman. I know plenty of people in Mogul that want to see that. That's the even as a first baseman, that's kind of the build they want. Um, his doubles are higher than his home runs. Home runs are a little bit low for what I want to see in a power guy. Because again, he might not be a power guy. He might be a contact eye guy with okay power, okay gap power at first base. A lot of people are going to play that, be happy with it. Again, on a personal thing, I'd prefer that pure power eye guy there with solid contact. But yeah, he's a lefty, so I think that also helps him out quite a bit. I think he'll play, especially in the right park, very well um, as he progresses. Auto or no, not a bad pick to have in this point of the draft.
Yeah, and that brings us to the Angels, Jerome White. So once again, I did draft for the Angels because
Yet you would not trade for the Angels.
no, I will. I did actually respond to you, and you didn't get back to me about
That
what
sounds
you
like
do.
me.
But yes, in terms of the Angels, we did have a GM. He just basically got really busy at work, and he basically quit, saying he wanted to join. He'd like a chance to come back, but he doesn't want to take over the team and then not do anything with them. And at the end of the day, I respect that.
Sure.
Uh, so tell me what you think of Jerome White, because I know what I think of him.
Well, yeah, this kind of is easy for you since you drafted half these cats. But as far as White goes, he's 20 years old, switch hitter, defensive first, center fielder. Now his birthday is going to be past, so you're not going to see it till next offseason. So next offseason he'll turn 21. Defense is very good. I mean, very good. You're looking at a guy that could be Gold Glove type center field defense, and very well might steal every base ever laid onto a diamond. I mean, his base stealing vitals are astronomically high. I mean, you're looking at 97 or above on everything, and only one thing's actually 97. Most are 98, 99. Like he's gonna steal every base if he can get on base. Now, amazing. So he's going to walk a lot, which will really help with that stolen base. Contact gap power, perfect. He's a double, triples hitter, amazing with that speed. He's going to be a triples inside the park home run type hitter. I'd be curious to see how many home runs that I see in his minor leagues, which are quite a bit, were actually inside the parkers. I know Mogul probably doesn't really do that, but it'd be interesting to make that notation. Contact's low. I don't like the contact being that low, even as a switch hitter. Switch hitters are usually going to be right around their overall if all goes well for contact. So if he hits a 90 overall, he'll have a 90 overall contact. That'll be great, but I'm concerned. At 20 to have a contact under 60, no bueno for me. Even if the rest of the stuff just screams, you want to kind of have this guy.
Yeah, those are all very valid points. So now I'll say why I drafted him. Yeah, that speed, just phenomenal. uh, I don't think there is another player in this file with that type of speed. Therefore, his defense, phenomenal. He's got a
Hmm
79 arm, and that's bad for him. Uh, so he's a Gold Glove center fielder that can run like crazy. Uh, then he's got the eye to get on base. He's got gap power, which, as he said, is going to be most of his singles are going to be doubles, and his doubles will be triples. Um, Power's weak, and once again, I don't think he's definitely not a 5 tool person, but I think he's a 4 tool. And yes, maybe his contact is light at 58 overall or 58 when he's 57 overall, but he's got his contact at 59. So even if he were to hit, let's say 87 peak, he's getting 87 contact, 88 contact. I will take that any day with everything else, because at that point, you know that everything else is going up. He's going to be in the 90s for fielding. He's going to get probably an 85 I or even 84. He's going to get 85 plus for gap power. Like there are a lot of things that are right there that just make him a star. The problem is let's say he hits 80 overall. Well, now he's not nearly as good. So he is basically, I think, your high risk, high reward. If he ends up nailing it, he's going to be fantastic. If he doesn't necessarily jump all the way, it could be a miss. But I also feel like uh, he's got enough time, even though he's 20, he just might be one of those late peakers.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of where that plays out. Because you're right, I'm not sure. I for a long time too. If they look like they'd be late peakers, I don't want them like gone. But the more I play, the more I get into it, the more I don't worry about when they peak, just that they do. So next pick goes looks like again to Miami, as long as this is still correct, and that was Galano Delgado, right-handed starting pitcher, 18 years old, coming out of high school. You look at this guy real quick. Doesn't have a home run problem. K to walk's good. OBA is low. His last year was under 1. Um, ERAs are good. Pitches good. He's got a good fastball, solid circle change, and an okay cutter. Speed's about where you want it to be. Ground ball's a little bit low, but should increase with time a little bit. And the vitals, he's got that power that we like to see, and then everything else is right there. All three other things are at or one above his overall. So curious at how he plays out. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think with him, it's just he's kind of a all or nothing. He either, if he hits everything, he's going to be fantastic. But if he misses, he's going to be like long relief, even if he just misses a bit. It, and I think that's the biggest thing is you definitely want those type of pitchers to be able to take a chance on them. But there were some other players that probably would have been more beneficial uh, for them. Like I don't know. I just don't think you can go out and say that he is ace material. He's definitely got the power for it, but nothing else really has progressed enough to know.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him ace material. I'd call him mid rotation material at this point. But um, yeah, a lot's gonna depend on what happens or doesn't happen over the next year or so. After this, we move on to Tim Codd. Tim Codd is an 18-year-old right-handed first baseman. Looks like he went to a fun team in the greater Northeast area. Um, this guy looks like he's got a good bat, got a good stick. Kind of Jekyl's and Hydes. And most years his doubles are better than his home runs, but that last year his home runs were far more than his doubles. Um, Walks as much or more than he strikes out, which is good to see. Means he's got a good eye. Um, Defense isn't really there, but you're not drafting him for his defense, you're drafting him for his bat, and you're gonna probably stick with DH or worst comes to worst, first base, and see what he can do. Um, all in all, I think it's quite a good pick. I think he's got good contact, good gap power, should have some decent regular power, and gonna got a hell of an eye. So I don't know. I like it.
Oh, that's good.
Well,
Uh,
it's mine. I have to like it. Let's be fair, but well, I don't have to like it, but I do. I was happy to see that this gentleman was slotted into my picks.
Yeah, I mean, he had a pretty easy list to follow, so that made it easy on my part. But yeah, he's pretty much gonna more than likely be a DH. But once again, it's not like his numbers are terrible. It's just his arm strength sucks. So you lay down that bunt from first to second, and you know, even Frank Thomas is reaching second base. So there's definitely a lot of things there. His contact's really powerful. His power does seem like it's going to be a little bit of an issue. So maybe he won't hit those ginormous home runs. But with that gap power, he's going to be hitting line drives like crazy. And
remember that he plays in Fenway. That means he's been hitting all those notches and gaps, or just playing pepper off the wall out there and left,
yep,
which makes him even that much more dangerous.
or literally if he just hits the green monster every single time, that's guaranteed hits. So I mean, he's definitely got the type of uh, quality that you want for a first baseman, specifically in Boston. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if you build your team specifically around that, it looks pretty good. So, it's one of those things. I think he will be a good piece. I don't think he would necessarily do well in a big pitcher's park, but he's a great pick at this spot. And I actually kind of liked him a little bit more than Tober.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I'd be very curious to watch him develop and see just kind of how good that bat gets and kind of what stands out once he hits the majors compared to some of that stuff that's going on currently in the minors. Um, Next pick, we got 18-year-old Alex Pizon. He is a starting pitcher that went to the Indians. What do you think about Pizon?
Yeah, so Pinzon is it looks kind of interesting. He's definitely one of those people that you were kind of aiming for him to uh, just do well because of his vitals. I think because of his peak. At this point, he was the highest peak person left, and just based off of the list that um, was given, that's who he ended up with. But I think it's a great selection. I don't think it's bad by any standard. He's got the potential to really be a good pitcher. It's just command. Command is once again the problem. And I know some people get caught up with the two pitches instead of three. Uh, but at the end of the day, if he does get that third pitch, it should be interesting to kind of see.
Yep, I don't disagree with any of that. So let's move on to the next player um, in the draft, and that would be another pitcher, Sean Roosevelt, who went to the Padres, 19-year-old relief pitcher. And again, this is one of those things. He's listed as relief pitcher, but his setup has him as a starter. Um, Quick glance, he's a relief pitcher. Good fastball, good changeup, power arm, good control. Movement command are about the same, just above his overall. Movement progresses, command stays right about there. Um, Dude's gonna pitch. Dude's gonna pitch real well. I mean, you look at his stats, and yes, they are high school stats, but good lord, when you put up back-to-back years of sub one OBA with a 0 ERA the one season and a .65 the other season, um, you take him. You take him. I mean, yeah, he's only an 88 peak, and that's probably what slowed some people down. But man, he looks like a top 15 pick to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little interested how he only played 3 games in 2020 and had 23 innings pitched. Don't really understand that one. Uh, but it's phenomenal. I think he's going to be fantastic. I love where his vitals are at currently. And just pull up San Diego for a second. They, at one point during the year, they were ahead of the Dodgers, which, considering how that how Fred has built that team, that's pretty fantastic. Then you look at the future, and yes, Fred's got the best pitcher in our league right now for the next like 7 years at 45 million. But Cal Quantrill, Mackenzie Gore, Adrian Morajan, Anderson Espinoza. I feel like I'm repeating myself from last year. Michael Baez, uh, all absolutely fantastic. And now you're going to throw in Rosevere as your closer. They have the team that they need. Now, the real question is, can it all be put together and him have a proper payroll? Uncle, if you're listening, try and find out a way to increase that payroll since you have 103 uh, cash. Like that could be the scary team in that NL, and it's really just kind of interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, very curious to see. Love what I think he's going to do. I think he'll be a good pitcher. Um, kind of they're closing down games, and I'm a lot of times the minority on this one, but I always want a dominant closer at the end of the pen. Two, if I'm lucky enough to get him. So, moving on to Brad Dukes, 20th overall to Pittsburgh. This Dukes is a left-handed center fielder, 21 years old. It's got that bat you want to see at 21 years old, with the contact, gap power, eye, and speed all being well above his overall. And just looking good. Defense wise, he is apparently Roosevelt is being stretched out, whether that's purposeful or not. Speed is weird. It looks high. It's not. His actual speed is 73, even though the rest of his stats in that block are pretty consistent for a good base dealer. So it'll be very interesting to see that lack of speed, and kind of how that affects his base running. Whereas I think he should be able to hit very well and probably pretty darn soon based on some of those vitals. What do you think about this pick?
Yeah, you know what? I actually liked him. As I said earlier, there were a couple outfielders I thought should have been taken uh, by Miami, and this is one of them. Um, yes, feel or speed at the end of the day, it's kind of interesting to see where everything goes. His fielding actually looks pretty decent as well, except for his throwing arm. So he's probably going to hit everywhere. He's just an older version, really, I think, of Jerome White, but without the speed and the upside as much. He's already definitely developed a little bit longer, and I just think he has the potential to be very good. But even if he were to bust and only hit like 75 overall or something like that, you're still going to get a decent enough player out of it. Maybe not an all-star, but definitely someone that's going to be ready. And when you look at the team that OWM has kind of created, uh, they're playing a 70 overall person who just hasn't jumped at all, but had good vitals, and you get that outfielder ready to start playing, and he could easily take over that NL Central because at this point anyone can do that.
Well, it happens. We are looking at a couple of pitchers next. The first of which being Christian Ruiz, who goes to Toronto. Um, Ruiz is 17. Got a good fastball, okay circle change, solid curve. GB rate's a little bit low for my liking. Health is down, which is good. Vitals nice. Doesn't have a home run problem. Strikes out more than they walk. OBA is good. Um, I like it. I like Ruiz. I'm not sure he's gonna be an ace. I think he could be a solid mid rotation starter, and I think that's nothing to be upset about.
Yeah, I once again I actually think he's going to be fairly decent. Um, Once again, probably more the middle, a 2 or 3. I think if he accelerated quickly, he could be ace material just based on maybe the limitation of home runs, and his power is actually not too bad, but all depends how control and movement kind of lay out. Really just kind of depends how the health thing goes, right? And I think this file's been a little weird in injuries. Some teams have gotten hit really hard. So if Toronto's lucky, doesn't have that, they actually end up with a fairly good pitcher. And at pick 21, there is no downside to this. It's definitely a good spot to get a decent player.
Absolutely. I think the one thing that people lose sight of when drafting is the later it gets in the round, the more they have to have that talent, and they overextend or take guys that other people passed on to get that talent. When really there's plenty of talent there, you just need to find it. And it's not generally something that's super secret, super hidden away. This isn't the Lord of the Rings and Gollum's ring being hidden somewhere. Like, this is just good scouting ability. You can find a lot of good players, and when you're around this pick, you take the one you think is going to be good, and you don't get too bent out of shape if all of a sudden they become a 4 starter instead of that 2 or 3 that you'd hope for. So next on the list, if I'm reading it correctly, which is a probability, John Anderson, relief pitcher, a right-handed relief pitcher, 17 years old. Um, 2 good pitches, some decent looking vitals. Nothing stands out as great. The command and movement are right at or just above his overall, which again, something I don't really want to see. I want to see a little bit more length, even at 17. Um, home runs, I'm not sure. He's had 2 seasons of 4 home runs over 20 innings. I guess that's one every 6. Not the worst, not the best for a relief pitcher. And his last year's stats were poor compared to the other ones. So some of them, not all across the board. It'll be interesting. Yeah, Lord of the Rings. Percy, why not? Lord of the Rings is transcendent in all different nerd cultures, whether that be fantasy baseball or otherwise. Um, but yeah, I like John Anderson. I'm not sure he's going to be as good as some of these other pitchers we've seen off the board, especially some of the other potential closers or relief pitchers. But guy, it's probably worth rolling the dice out here. What do you think on him?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's one of those cases where War Priest kind of lucked out in um, getting a decent auto. In terms of that, it was an auto, but his power is excellent. His control is fairly good. There's a lot of things there that really show that he could be a very good closer. And maybe he doesn't become, the Hall of Fame closer, not a BJ Ryan from like 2002 or something like that. But he could also become the BJ Ryan that was the Blue Jays. You just never really know what you're going to get from that type of build. So hopefully for War Priest it works out because I do think I think he was the best relieving pitcher that was available in this draft. It will just kind of be interesting to see if it actually works out.
Yeah, well, and again, this part of the draft, you're got a little bit more of the ability to kind of make a play for that splash move that other people don't see. So, um, yeah, it'll be interesting. Next pick, I tried to read off as I somehow got something magically in my eye. Um, is Tech Lin goes to the Nationals, 17-year-old right-handed center fielder. Um, big gap power, big eye, speed that is deceptive. I don't think it's quite speed. I don't think it's quite defensive speed. I think it's maybe a little bit of both or somewhere in the middle. Defensively looks terrible if you look at Diamond, and maybe he is, but stat wise looks solid enough for center, right, left, somewhere in that outfield, probably center, maybe right, depending on that arm and how that progresses. Um, all in all, though, I mean, you're looking at hits lefties and righties almost the same, with big gap power and not so great other power. I'm curious, very curious to see how he transitions. Does he become almost a soft leadoff type bat, or maybe that 2 hole or that 5 hole? So, um, curious to see how he plays out as well. But time will tell. What do you think about Mr. Rin?
Yeah, I mean, he was also an auto. Donkey couldn't make the draft because he just got a new job and was moving states. So that's kind of unfortunate for him because I know he was trying to build a team, and this season he hasn't necessarily been quite as active as he was hoping. But uh, this is one of those players I think is kind of similar to Jerome White, where once again, not for being like a 4 out of 5, but if everything were to progress nicely for him, he could be a very good player. It's just that contact and power being so close to his overall that it makes it hard. If one of them was even better than the other, I think it would be nicer. But at the end of the day, I think he's going to be fairly good. And although his fielding rate looks pretty bad, a 69 as a center fielder, I think he'll actually perform above his expectation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think his defense is better than people give him credit for or hold against him for. Osmart Weimer goes to the Cardinals with the next pick. Another power pitcher type guy. Good fastball, good change, okay curve, big command, big power, movement and control are lagging a little bit. Stats very good. Home runs are down. Strikeout to walk is not as good as I like, especially in this build, but solid. Um, and again, two good pitches. So, what do you think about Mr. Weimer?
Well, it's interesting. I was thinking his name was Weimer. So Weimer is probably better, especially when you're talking about big power. You wouldn't want to misplace a letter or something on that name.
Let's be fair. We've already talked about how tired we are, so it very could be. I'm just going with Weimer. I don't know. I'm going to stick to it, but I could see it being Weimer.
Yeah.
Wait, what did I say the first time?
No, you said
Is
Weimer.
it Weimer? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Now I'm
no,
confused.
exactly. Anyways, I think he's a phenomenal pick. Once again, a little surprised that he dropped this low at the end of the day. I love that his power is so high. He's got 3 pitches with his fastball being very good. His command's 72, 12 above the overall. His control's also above his overall. His movement's a little bit behind, but once again, if you look at it that way, it probably continues to carry over. It's really just the 89 overall or 89 peak. So where does he fall in line with that? And I don't know if he's already jumped, but he's 18, and so there are a lot of things that could be very good about him, and I kind of think that he's a bit of a steal at this late.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure I quite see all that, but yeah, I can see where you're getting it from. So, um, kind of another one to keep tabs on. Moving on to the Phillies pick. Phillies take Jamie Class, a defensive last second baseman. Uh, what do you think about Class? First glance, I'm not thrilled by what I see. It looks to be a good to slightly above average bat with poor defense. Um, I'm not sure if he's getting him as trade bait or he actually expects him to play. Um, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. That was one of those players that you didn't want to get being autoed, and yeah, that's what happened
Oh, that
there.
was an auto pick. Okay, that
Yeah,
makes a lot more. That makes more sense then, because I mean, you like his bat, but his glove is just not there.
yeah. I mean, I definitely think he's got the ability to be a decent hitter. I just don't think he's going to be anything more than a bench player, and uh, yeah, I don't know what happened there because Super Dick's usually pretty good about sending a list, but just didn't send one. But then he put a file out the next thing. So you know what? Some leagues, some people don't necessarily draft as much, and there's one league right now that I just can't draft in because everyone I've drafted is absolutely garbage. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, and that's just half the fun of playing this game now. But yeah, I don't. The bat should be okay, but it's not going to make it for the defense. I just don't. Ugh, I hope he gets a jump and somebody doesn't realize what's going on and dump him like he's hot. Ryan Ward, first baseman, goes to the Atlanta Braves. This is a guy with big time contact, gap power, and eye. Solid defense. Regular power is lacking, so I mean he's clearly going to be more of a doubles guy than a home runs guy. And again, we talked about this earlier. Depending on the park, that could be very beneficial to a player. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here with Ward. But I like him. I like him quite a bit. I think he is a bat that can be not necessarily one of the better bats out of the draft. I would definitely not go that far, but dangerous, a dangerous bat that you plug in and just kind of hit some people in, but still stays on base, so the next guy can just knock one over the fence.
Yeah, I actually think he has the potential to be the best first baseman of the three that were taken. Doesn't mean that he will be. I think your guy still has the edge of probably being a little more guaranteed. I just think if everything goes well for Ryan, he could actually exceed that expectation.
Yeah, I could see it happening when put a bet on it, but I definitely see that as a possibility. But again, I do like that pick. I think that's a right-handed hitter or no. It's a nice choice. Getting closer to the end of the first round, we're at pick 27. That was the Yankees pick. They took pitcher Brian Harris, one of those power pitchers that Okie and I have been talking about all night, who we like. Good fastball, okay changeup, not so great cutter. Throws pretty hard. Ground ball rate's a little bit higher than what I want to see out of a power pitcher, and a little bit lower than what I want to see out of a normal pitcher. But the vitals are pretty good. Home runs don't seem to be an issue. Strikes out more than he walks. All in all, not a bad pitcher. Not the best pitcher. I think there are some definite red flags here with movement, command, and control all being right around it overall, if not one below. But good. A good, solid pitcher. I'd say probably mid-rotation starter when all's said and done. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this late, he's just one of those pitchers that he's the wild card. You don't really know what's going to happen, but he's got the makings of being a very high end, second, third RP. If he gets phenomenal boosts, then he could easily be your ace. And at pick 27, there's really nothing to go wrong there. So it's just one of those cases. You kind of hope you hit that home run, and New York could easily do that with that pick.
Yeah, and I think when you're late in the draft like this, you take those home run shots because you're already at the end of the round, so nobody's going to give you too much crap if you miss out. Um,
Exactly.
which is it's one of the benefits of picking toward the end. Houston, Carlos Arcos, right-handed pitcher, 20 years old. This is a build that I'm surprised didn't go sooner. A lot of people really like this high ground ball, big power, big control. Movement's a little low. Or, I'm sorry, movement's pretty good. Command's a little bit low. Like he looks like a top end row starter, especially when you look at his stats. Doesn't have a home run issue. Strikes out about 3.5 when he walks. OBA is really low. Why was he still here this late in the draft? What do you think?
I don't know how he was still here, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, as you probably know, I was kind of controlling Houston's offseason, getting them some free agents. So this is my type of pitcher as well. The high power, high control movement. There's really no reason that he should not have been taken, and that kind of goes back with some of those other pitchers. You kind of hope that you take them to get kind of that home run, but Arcos looks like the home run that you should have taken. So it should be kind of interesting. I think really the biggest area of curiosity for him is 86 peak, right? He's going to be one of those players that you hope he puts everything together, but he may not. If he finishes with like 80 overall, he's going to be like a number 5 starter, and obviously in the first round you're not necessarily trying to get a number 5.
No, if you got number 5 in the first round, you've made a terrible mistake somewhere. Now, Mark Bauer, next to the Twins. What do you think, real quick, about Mark Bauer and his lovely power eye combo?
Well, this is an Andy pick. Mark Boxer reminds me of that guy from Toronto. Was it Vargas or whatever? Who was that third baseman that
Mm.
was literally the best third baseman to ever play in FCM? That's what I see right there.
Wait, so there's two that come to my mind. One of which was the dude from Cincy that I had in Seattle for a while, but I don't
No,
think that's who you mean.
no, sorry. I'm talking about the guy that was on Toronto. This is one of those
Y-
times I wish Andy was here.
Yeah, I can't off the top of my head. The only other one I could think of was the one that was on the Mets for a long time.
Oh, I was thinking of Sean Vogel.
Oh, you were thinking way back. Okay.
Yeah, but he might have been a second base, not a third base.
I thought Vogel was second, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, so
Yeah.
is that what you're seeing here out of
I
gentlemen
think that
Boxer?
that's the potential that's there. Now I have to just go back further and see, but I definitely do think that that's what he's just hoping for. I don't necessarily think that's the potential, but like when I see this pick, I can't take anyone with a 58 contact and 71 overall. I bypass them like crazy. But Andy is clearly going for something, and yeah, that's who it is. The third baseman was Jose Vargas, so that's who.
Oh, so it was Vargas. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that when Andy picks, you trust him. He generally knows what he's doing. So, all right, last pick of the round. Believe it or not, we've already made it to the pick, and that was Hugo Bustamante. He was a 18-year-old right-handed starting pitcher. He goes to the Dodgers. This is a guy that I know, a certain somebody that on this podcast is going to like for me because he's got 81 power. Command and control and movement all a little bit low, so maybe not as well as he likes some of the other pitchers. Good fastball, solid slider, good change. Throws 100 miles an hour, 40% ground ball rate. End of the round, yeah, yeah, I'll definitely take a shot on him at the end of the round. What did you pick in Hugo?
Oh, I definitely like the pick, especially this late. I think of all the power command style people, I definitely think that he's the one that could be the best. It will be interesting to see how everything happens with the Dodgers, but yeah, there's definitely lots of things about Hugo to like. And to be honest, there wasn't a whole lot after that necessarily made it um, make it look like it was a bad pick because most of the other pitchers were, especially starting pitchers, were similar. The only thing that maybe would have been a little more beneficial if, for the Dodgers is to go one of the relievers, but at the end of the day, like I said, you had that you win a World Series, you're going for that guy that you either want bust or ace, and Bastamante could easily be that.
Yep, yeah, it's the curse and the benefit of winning the World Series. You pick last. It's the benefit because you just won the World Series. It's a curse because there's plenty of guys going 29 more picks before you that you're going to probably rather have. So you swing for the fences, absolutely. If you have a pick of those last couple, you swing for the fences and hope for the best. And if things come back the best on this guy, yeah, you're going to have quite a nice player in your hand. If they don't, things falter. You know, that's where we start to see more issues. So. And with that, that is all 30 picks in the first round of this 2021 amateur player selection draft. Any final thoughts or anything you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Well, did you want to go over any of the steals of the second or anything? Did you take a look at any of those?
I took a look briefly at some of the other picks in the other rounds, just to get an idea, but not in depth enough to give you any good insight on guys that I was like, oh wow, how did that guy make it that far? So.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to touch quickly on. I love that the first three picks of the comp, which was Seattle, Boston, and Houston, all took third basemen. Um,
Well, when I give you a list, that's kind of what happens. So,
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of that, I was actually surprised Broadberry was not taken by one of those late picks. So I'll once again I drafted for Houston, so I'll just touch a little bit base on that. He's 75 contact and 57 overall, and his eye is 58. So I know that everything I just said was that the eye is terrible, but boy, he's that type of player that just maybe he ends up just cranking the ball all the time. But he could also be the one that runs to first base and breaks all his bones in his body because 61 health is atrocious.
yep. Well, again, the longer we get into the draft, the more the guys get a little more hit and miss. So, you take the stuff, the bat, the defense, whatever you have, over the hell sometimes, and either it pays off great or it screws you.
Yep, I definitely agree with that. Um, I mean, in terms of that, I did do some more thinking about the Winter League, which is what we kind of talked about last time. So if you're
Yep.
done with the draft, I can kind of go over some of the things I had. I was still
Sure.
trying to figure out some things, specifically for when it's not like a righty lefty. So, kind of the way that I put this as Winter League rules cost is 10 mil. You can only select one player. So, if you post all your depth charts, what that does, so even if you say no change, uh, right now in Winter Ball, you get one roll, right? And that's just kind of your chance. So, what I would do is two rolls with highest being the effect.
Mm,
Um, If you miss one depth chart, you just get one roll. And if you've missed two or more depth charts, it's just more money. So it's 20 million for one roll. So if you do all your lineup changes properly, you have a chance to have two rolls for the best chance. In terms of dice roll payouts, so this is for more for hitters with the right left. Uh, I'm still trying to debate whether I do 1 to 20 50-day injury. I feel like maybe I should still have that just because of it actually affecting a peak player, but that's something. 21 to 60 is +5 to dominant hand. So if you were
mm.
going over, say you want to go with power, right? So you're sending him away for power. He's a split 75-70, and you finish in that 21 to 60. Now he's an 80-70. Um, unless I change it to +5 to weak hand, maybe that evens it out a bit more. Obviously, this is a thing to play. 61 to 130 is +5 to both hands. So I might have to change the numbers again, but that would give a full bump of 5. Uh, 131 to 185 +10 dominant hand. So 70 to 80 or whatever. And if you are lucky enough to go 186 to 200, it's +10 to both hands.
I
So
think it's very interesting to kind of give that option to get guys to winter ball or whatever you have them potentially be more helpful to the big league squad now than the typical prospect jump that you wait a couple years and hope that it pans out.
yeah. So I mean, like let's look at a player on your team, for instance.
Ugh, my team is terrible.
Yeah, but Andrew Benatendi, right? That's close enough, I
Yep,
think. So overall, he looks like a pretty good player.
should
Uh,
be.
91 contact, 79 power, 91 gap, 85 eye. He's hitting 326. He's just missing 5 home runs. Or sorry, he's only got 5 home runs. So overall, he looks pretty decent. Maybe his fielding's not the greatest, but I would assume that the thing that would be most important for you is to increase his power.
Sure would be.
So you send him to Winter League, and let's just say hypothetically, you get 186. So you're in
Hmm.
that +10 to hands. All of a sudden, he becomes an 81 power versus lefties and 93 versus righties.
Right. He all of a sudden becomes a very nice power hitter. Right. It's an interesting idea, and I think the part that I like about the best is the free roll per podcast done. So I think that's a fantastic add to that rule.
Oh,
So
yeah. So how that would change, because I just did it quickly in the file, uh, it would put him to 89 overall. So 3 overall jump. That's for getting super lucky, and you'd never be able to send him again. And that puts him at 89 power. So now he becomes 90, 89, 90, 85. I
right.
mean, I once again, everything still stays in line. It actually just kind of puts his contact uh, or the power very similar to his contact. And I think the beauty about something like that is, for him, it's going to be that. But you could have someone completely different. Um, maybe let's look at Dodgers, for instance. Maybe someone like say he really wanted to make Cody Bellinger even more of a stud than he already is. Maybe he just wants the fielding up, um, so he becomes less of a disaster in the field. Like there are a lot of ways that you could do it. Like I don't think it makes anything go crazy, because at the end of the day, um, if you're basically wasting a chance regardless sending that player, and I don't think it is a negative impact. It's just whether or not people actually find that to be as useful as they think. Like I said, I feel like moving forward, uh, winter ball should probably uh, the reason that you want to do winter ball should be less about the people that are 70/90. I think what you want to start looking at are some of those players that look like they're 55 overall or 50 overall, because those are the ones that might actually get a big jump, and become a lot better than you think.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that it all sounds interesting to me.
so I mean, once again, if you guys have any thoughts on that, I can post it in the chat. Really, what I need to figure out is how I would alter that for single things. So, like, if you were looking at a pitcher and you wanted to improve their power, then y- you can't really do a +5 to both hands, or you couldn't really do +5 to power and +5 to something else. I think it's just trying to find that right area. So that's that's my area of where I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah, 18 plays so much different than some of the other games, but it is what it is. So, anything else we want to discuss?
Uh, I think everyone's starting to see jumps are happening later, so that's a bonus. If you guys didn't notice that, I think the file's equalizing a lot better now. I don't think you're still seeing people drop one up or one down, but I definitely see more jumps, which is great. You know, a specific Boston pitcher looks like he's going to be really good and should probably be traded to LA for Otani.
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen because Boston is not going to do that. So, yeah, Boston. I think we had the one jump. See, well, we're happy to see any jump, but the one in particular was a welcome uh, addition. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think things are starting to even out again, or even out finally. So, be curious to see if we continue to have some of the gripes and or issues that we've had last season and a half, 2 seasons. So, late jumps, nothing wrong with that. I mean, technically, we're only in mid. Well, no, this file's mid June. We're actually above that, but we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see.
exactly. Yeah, we're at July 1st. So Sam obviously is Sunday, but you know what? I think things are starting to look a lot better in terms of jumps, more consistency. And if you guys have any ideas of who to get as GMs, that would be great.
That's right. For every podcast you have to listen to, not only do you have to make a donation to the Boston Bank of Red Sox, which we do appreciate our loyal listeners, but you also need to get out there and become active members of getting more loyal listeners. So please call friends, call family members, find GMs to come over and join us here. The water's fine, and we only bite a little bit. So after that radio advertisement, do we have anything else we want to discuss, or is this the most logical place to end?
I think this is a good place to end. Thank you again for hosting this, MZ.
No worries. I always enjoy coming to myself drone on about nonsensical things. So, yes, uh, goodbye, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this. Once again, this was the uh, draft review for this most previous draft. There were no mistakes this draft because we did an awesome job. But if there were any mistakes, we're well aware that Jermaine would fix them in post. So, thank you all for listening, and we will see you out on the diamond. Good night.